Chapter 5. Young Caged Hearts. Nightfall had set in after the long, hot day, and a fire was now lit at the center of the camp. Stubb and Slagg could be heard walking down the path toward the campsite, with 3 more young woodland creatures, bound by rope, leading a line of misery ahead of them. Meanwhile, Ruuna remained firmly bound to the sturdy birch tree, her freedom curtailed by unforgiving ropes. From the cramped confines within the cage, the smaller creatures could see the misery of Ruuna's plight, their hearts filled with a potent mix of helplessness and fear. Cecil was sat against the bars, his gaze fixed upon her silhouette. He watched as her chest slowly swelled and contracted with every breath she took, hoping that Ruuna's beleaguered form would awake. Yet Belle could not bear to look. She was filled with an angry frustration at what had happened before.
How could I have let her take that punishment for herself? Why couldn't I move myself to stop them? Oh, I'm a right miserable creature, I am.
Belle was cut off from her own thoughts when Stubb and Slagg had noisily approached the cage.
Oi! This be a good little catch, ain't it? I'm betting no beast be stopping us.
Yeah, the captain will be right pleased with us with this catch.
Oh, shut it, you. It was my trap. All you did was howl at them with a stick, while I did the real catching.
The 3 new slaves that the 2 tyrants had captured, a small gray squirrel and 2 moles, brother and sister, with heavy digging claws, were shoved into the cage with the previous 9. They waited for the 2 slavers to leave before bating their breath, lest they end like the little mouse tied against the tree. With a clatter and a click, the door was locked shut, and the 2 weasels took their leave.
What's gonna happen to us now?
The little squirrel, called Sam, asked worriedly.
We're going to become slaves for that awful Slagg and his bandits.
A young shrew named Brok answered, his tone filled with disdain for the vermin who had them captive. There was a moment's silence as these words sank in, with only the sound of hopelessness filling their surroundings. The little mole, named Star, had caught sight of the diminutive mouse tied against the tree, and asked about her.
What's the little mouse you're doing tied up against your tree?
Cecil sighed heavily before answering.
That's Ruuna.
If you don't want to end like her, then make sure you don't make her mad.
A young rat named Quint warned as he half-heartedly tilted his head in Ruuna's direction. Belle stared at the rat with upset brown eyes, her anger boiling not just at the words Quint spoke, but also herself. She let herself stand as she addressed Quint's implication, with a quiver in her voice.
Oh, quiet you! She did nothing wrong. We are free creatures, and we have families to go back to. What she did was brave and true. We shouldn't let the fear of them control us.
But we need a plan to escape. Not just one, but all of us.
Brok voiced, with the other creatures nervously shuffling at the remark, not quite sure whose side to choose. Cecil put silence to the party after he noticed Scratchnose approached Ruuna at the tree.
Shh, quiet. They're cutting her loose.
The whole of the prisoners scrambled over to see the ropes holding Ruuna's limp body being cut away from the large birch tree. They all gulped when she collapsed to the ground with an inglorious thump at the roots. Belle, especially, gasped, holding her mouth in dismay as Scratchnose brutally grabbed the fur of Ruuna's nape and dragged her toward the cage. Thinking quickly now, she gathered everyone's attention to her.
Listen, you lot. We need to get anything we can to help her. Food, water, something.
Why help her? She did nothing for us.
Quint spoke with a harsh tone.
Yeah, why are you so attached to her?
Another asked. Belle was appalled at these questions. In her mind, she knew that if she didn't look after Ruuna, she would surely die.
My father always taught me to be good to all creatures. It's our word of honor. If we aren't good to each other, we won't escape. No creature could flee this prison on their own.
Belle addressed the crowd of smaller creatures. Everyone knew she was right.
And besides this, you saw how she stood to fight for us. We should help her any way we can.
Quiet, you lot. I didn't give you permission to talk. Here, you can take this dried meat and use her as a reminder. If any of you speak out like she did, you'll bake in the sun for the whole day, just like her.
Scratchnose's nasally tone exclaimed as he tossed Ruuna's limp body into the cage with them. Cecil tried to catch her before she crashed into the ground, but he tumbled backward at the sudden impact of Ruuna's weight falling into him. Everyone stared at Scratchnose as he laughed with distasteful delight at the pitiful state of every creature, especially Belle. The cage door clattered and locked closed, and Belle now took command to help Ruuna as Scratchnose took his leave.
Oh, poor thing. Cecil, you and I will get her on her back, gently. You three, find any scraps of food and bring them here for her. And you, grab that blanket and start fanning her. Ow! She's burning hot to the touch. Quint, could you find some water for her, please?
Belle's voice was authoritative but soft. Quint was caught off guard by the badger's motherliness, even though she couldn't have been much older than the rest of them.
I'll do what I can.
Quint thought a moment, then paced around the cage in search of the requested item. Eventually, he spotted a small cup just outside the cage bars, behind a weasel sitting on a log before the fire pit. He struggled and stretched to reach it, careful not to make much noise, but it was too far to reach with his paws alone. He noticed that the handle was pointed toward him. If only he could reach it. There weren't any sticks in view, but he realized that he didn't need one, as his tail could act like a soft stick when extended. In a less than dignified pose, he whispered to himself as he strained and struggled to reach the cup through the wooden bars.
Almost. Come on. Almost there. Ha! Gotcha. No sneaky cup is gonna ditch my good tail.
In time, he brought the cup of liquid closer to the cage. He was just barely able to sneak it in, when suddenly one of the guards standing near the fire pit started approaching. Frozen with fear, Quint held the cup in his paws, completely forgetting to hide so that the guard wouldn't see it. Another creature, a dormouse named Tib, anticipated the situation and slid in front of the fear-frozen rat to hide the cup. Quint stared at Tib as he held his finger to his lips, a sign that meant it was time to keep quiet. Looking at the cup, Quint put the puzzle together and hid behind Tib as the guard approached. It was Red-claw. He stared at the prisoners in their pitiful state. Not seeing any real mischief, he stopped in front of them and snorted.
Not getting yourselves into trouble, be ye? Bah! You lot be boring me to sleep. Come on now, put up a fight, if ye dare.
He squawked as he smacked the cage with the blunt of his spear, laughing at the flinch most of the prisoners gave. Both Tib and Quint stared at him with a maddening gaze before he finally disappeared behind the brush. Soon, both had brought the cup of liquid to Belle to administer to Ruuna.
Wine? Guess it will do better than dirt. Thank you, Tib.
Hey, I found it, not Tib.
All right, all right. Thank you, Quint. Thank you both. Now let's give her some room.
Quint felt a lot better at the proper recognition of his finest work. Still, it was nice to be thanked for doing something good for a change. Belle now took the wine and dipped the end of her dress into it. With the wet end, she dabbed Ruuna's forehead with it. Surprisingly, everyone in the cage was watching in awe as Belle took the lead in caring for Ruuna. The question of why Belle wanted to do all this still lingered in the air, but it went unanswered when Ruuna began to awake. At first, it was a cough. Then, slowly but surely, her eyes began to flicker open. When her vision finally cleared, she saw many worried faces staring back at her.
Are you all right?
Cecil asked innocently.
No, of course she's not all right, Cecil. She was just baking in that awful hot sun the whole day.
Belle exclaimed as she pushed Cecil back.
Ugh! Now, give her some room to breathe.
Ruuna sat upright and Belle gave her the cup of wine. Ruuna sniffed it before cramming her head into the cup of precious liquid. She drank it so fast that she almost choked. With one last gulp, Ruuna wiped her face as she gasped for air, her ears relaxing now after her drink. She looked back at everyone's anticipated expressions and began to soften at the support they had all given her.
Thank you all for helping me. I don't know what to say,
she said as she rubbed her eyes. It was only Brok who broke the silence as he optimistically answered Ruuna's remark.
Say that you will get us home.
All in the cage began to join in, saying the same thing. Belle had a smile on her face and a new air of confidence as she stood to calm and address the young prisoners.
Fear not, every creature. We will see freedom again. Ruuna, Cecil and I will take the charge. Now is not a good time to try to escape, though. Once Ruuna is back to her full strength, then we will make our escape. Until then, we'll need to keep a good set of eyes out for anything we can use against those ugly beasts.
Each gave a small cheer for the trio as they got busy and put themselves to work, making Ruuna comfortable. The next morning, before the sun had peeked over the mountains, Ruuna was eating some of the berries that had been collected for her the night before. She was sitting against the cage bars, looking around at the other sleeping creatures. They were huddled together to keep warm throughout the night, each one with the others they were most comfortable with, all save for Quint, who nobody really liked. He was shunned into the middle of the cage, shivering on the cold, hard ground with no blanket. Ruuna couldn't sleep much that night, with thoughts and worries of her family, friends, and home weighing on her mind. Seeing Quint suffering, though, broke her focus for just a moment. It seemed that he couldn't sleep either.
Hey, you look cold and alone over there.
Yeah? What's it to you? You're the light of the fire, not me.
Quint shivered smartly.
Well, I was going to offer you a place next to me in these warm blankets, but you seem too grumpy to want to warm up.
Ruuna countered with her own air of sass. Quint thought about this for a moment, then turned his head away as if to refuse.
I don't need some mousy maid to look after me. I'll be fine on me own.
He snarked, but petered out as he felt himself shiver violently.
Aren't you a sea rat, Quint?
What's it matter to you? You wouldn't care if I was a sea rat or not. I'm just a rat, and that's enough for everyone else to hate me.
Ruuna didn't particularly like rats. She was told that they were troublemakers and only cared for themselves. But that didn't seem true.
Belle told me that you found the wine for me last night.
Ruuna got up and approached Quint, with the blanket bunched close to her.
And for that, I should thank you. Here, take one of my blankets. It'll help warm you up.
Quint looked at Ruuna with an angry stare that softened for only a moment.
I told you already. I'm fine on me own.
He broke eye contact as he turned over, leaving Ruuna to stare at his cold, sorry state. Quint could hear Ruuna shuffling, hoping that she might have listened and left him on his lonesome. He was surprised when she sat next to him and covered him with half her blanket. It was warm to the touch and nearly immediately stopped his shivering. He stared at her with a confused look captured in his expression, bewildered at her insisted kindness.
What?
Don't ask. I don't know why I'm doing this either. You should have your ear pinched off for all I care.
Ruuna didn't want to look at Quint, but she knew that she could be good to other creatures. That's what Mum would have said. Besides, without him, she would have died from thirst, she thought.
Where do you come from, Quint? You're not like any other rat I've seen before.
She was hoping to learn something that could counter her view of rats. There was a moment of silence as Quint mustered the courage to tell. It didn't come the way he thought it would. In a shy, muttered voice, he stammered over his words as he spoke.
I guess I am a sea rat.
Ruuna gave a confused stare. She wasn't expecting him to admit such a thing.
Why do you say that?
Because I don't have a home like you. Isn't that what a sea rat is? A creature that doesn't have a home?
His voice seemed to soften with the realization of his circumstances.
No, I don't think so. Dada always told me that it's a rat that lives in the open seas. Like, on a ship, I think.
Really? I mean, I knew that.
Ruuna couldn't help but giggle when she caught the bluff, replying with a playful smile.
Right. I'm sure you did, you big fibber.